you guys are really distracting. I finally get to start building my little deck area here with my 3 little steps here. I hope I get this all done in one day, but we'll see how it goes. I'm running into a bit of an issue in that my slab here is not level and it's not flat. Dealing with the level is fairly easy, and that's why I've got my laser out. So what I can do is just make sure I've got a nice square end here, let this be all sorts of however tilted out that it wants to be, and then mark where the laser is showing level, and then flip that over like I've done with this one for this spot, and then that ends up being pretty plumb. It's a little bit off because I've got the edge detail in the concrete here has a little bump on it, so it's not quite perfect, but it's pretty darn close, and without coming out and putting a grinder on it, it'll be okay for what I'm doing here. I have to do that 3 more times and we'll get some point of view video of doing that. I wanted to make sure it was going to work the first time before I bothered making it nice and clean and pretty for YouTube. So let's get on with making 3 more of those. The way that I do that is to start by just cutting them a little bit longer. I'm cutting them to 18 inches, and the overall height I think that I need is 16 inches, so that gives me room of 2 inches to cut the little bit extra off at the top once it's done and plumb, and it gives me room in case the first time I try to make it plumb it isn't perfect. I get a little bit of play to redo it, and then I'm not trying to fuss like an 8-foot tall 4x4, so I'm just working with smaller pieces. I've already marked out 18, 18, and 18. I don't care if I cut to one side or in the middle of the line. Like I said, 18 is a little bit longer than I need. We'll just chop these up and then I'll have a little bit extra left over. That little bit extra left over is probably $5 worth of wood right now. That'll do. Now, none of these were cut with any degree of care, so we're gonna hop back over to my finally too small miter saw and clean up the one end of each of these. That one's actually really good. Okay. Well, when you buy a $149 miter saw, you kind of get what you pay for. I had to fuss getting this to be square enough to have the turnover cuts cut down to about here, roll it over, cut back down again, have those lining up nice and evenly. They're not perfect, but they're certainly close enough for deck work. And bring these out here. I want the top step to line up with this front edge of the garage here. Yeah, this has to be back by 1.5 inches for the 2x6 that'll go across here, and then back 1.5 inches here. So this has to come out a bit so that when I get it plumb, it's at 1.5 inches. Plumb about there. That's pretty close. And we need to come out a little bit more because we're going to have some washers as spacers there. I've got my 4 posts about in the position that they need to be in. I've got my laser set so that the middle of the concrete is at the same height as the laser. So when I mark my laser on my posts, that will be the top, and then I have to cut off an extra 1 inch for the deck boards. Got just a little bit of shade right now, which is very nice. Makes it much easier to see the laser. Now you might be wondering, why am I using a shim as a straight edge? And that's because working with the laser in this light, when I've used my middle straight edge, I've gotten reflections that when it's not just suddenly overcast like this, which like I said is great, makes it impossible to see the laser. Yep. Here, we will apply you over there in a place I will not step. One of the best pieces of advice I ever heard was always take a rock out of your shoe. So that should be straight. That should be one of my angled cuts. Hey, that one's really good. So they are all exactly this tall, and they need to come down by the thickness of the bottom plate, and then the thickness of the deck board was 1 1/16, so we'll take 1 1/4 inch off of the tops of all of these. There we go. These are all cut. Should be able to get them back into their relative positions after I get the bottoms put on. And you can see how much difference in height the slab has here. They know I have my earbuds in, they know that I'm streaming. There are liability and legal issues if they end up in any sort of video, so they just kind of try to keep a fairly low profile. All right, I've got my 4 support posts here. The next thing is 2x6 frame around these, and then 1 in the middle. We'll go all the way to that end there. We get 61 and come out just a bit. So I want it to come out, match right up to the edge of the sidewalk. We'll call that 38. Write it down before you forget. 61 by 38. Now that 38 is going to be a little shorter. It'll be 3 inches shorter. It'll be 35. Can I get 35 out of this piece? That's going to save me a lot of money. I was expecting to have to use an entire 2x6 to get these end pieces out. I can just squeeze this here. Okay, then I need, I said 61, right? So I need one that's 3 inches shorter, 58. I have laid out the top frame of my little step deck area, and it's a lot bigger than I expected, but I mean, the measurements don't lie most of the time. So I'm just gonna blast this all together. I'm gonna leave the middle one detached for now so that I can come along with my concrete drill and get this one actually attached into, I keep pointing that way because it's going to be here, get that attached into the concrete there. And then I can come along and connect this middle piece after. But I can get the outside bits done, and then I can bring the posts in and get them done, and then I can basically plunk the whole thing down in place as like a completed thing. After that, I get it screwed into the concrete. After that, I make my stair stringers and get my middle piece put in, and then after that, it's just deck boards on top. And these guys, I'm gonna try to maintain orientation here. We'll go like this. And like this. And I think what I might do is flip this over here, and then I can flip that like that, and this like this, and this like this, and this like this. I'm making a bit of a fuss to maintain orientation because I cut it at a funny angle on the bottom of all of these. So I want to make sure that that is maintained in their proper positions. Definitely the least awkward way to carry this. So that's that. Let's see how I did for getting it level. Moment of truth. Good job, Moose. Now this one is a little tiny bit off perfect. I am pleased with that. With how much I had to fuss these things. And if you missed it, I fussed them a lot. with how much I had to fuss those, I'm very pleased with how that turned out. That is a win. The next step is to drill through this in 3 spots and put some washers in behind to create a little bit of a gap, so any water that will be on the top of the deck or on the top of the concrete has room to flow down and doesn't get stuck on top of this wood and doesn't get stuck between the wood and the concrete and start rotting things out. So we're going to drill some holes through, put some washers in behind to create that gap, and then get some concrete anchors in. Someone in my chat reminded me that I need to get this resisto stuff on top of this one before I get it attached to the concrete, because I won't be able to wrap it around after it's been attached. So we're gonna get this put on over this way, and then we'll attach it, and then we'll deal with the rest of this later. There we go, that's much better. I just put in a secondary washer to increase the gap because the resisto rubber that I put on top kind of closed the gap, but now I've got very clearly, hopefully you guys can see, I've very clearly got space in between. So we are at 38, which is 19 to the middle. 16 on center is 1.5 inches over. I think it'll be okay. That's pretty centered. Okay, I am liking how much lower the hammer hook is. That is better, but so far just about everything else about the DeWalt tool belt is worse. If you have got uneven either top or uneven bottom, you have to make accommodation for that when you build your stringers. I have had nothing in any of the concrete work that I had done for me being flat or square or level or like any sort of good other than the garage pad. Long story. Anyway, it is taller here than it is here. The way that I've dealt with that is to measure for the tallest point. So we're, I don't know, 16 3/4 probably, compared to maybe 16.5, 16 3/8 there. So that's a 1/4 inch difference. The way that I've had to deal with that in the past has been say, okay, we'll ignore whatever this side is doing. We're gonna measure the highest point here, and we're gonna build all our 3 stair stringers to be to that height. The reason we do that is we can come along later and say, okay, well the one in the middle, that's too tall now. If we measure these all to be the same, then as we get higher up on the ground level here, we kind of creep up this way. And we can take care of that by cutting under the bottom tread on the bottom side and lowering that back down. So our stairs end up level and we have a slight height difference from this side to the first step, but then from the first step to the second step, first step is level, second step is level, third step is level. Everything is level except from here to the first step. We got 16 3/4 exact. So 16.75 divided by 3. Why 3? Because steps should be between 5 and 7.5 inches thereabouts. If I go 16.75 divided by 2, I get 8 3/8, which is too much. It's a nice even split, but it's too tall. Keep your steps between 5 inches and 7.5 inches, maybe a little bit more than 7.5, but 8 and a bit is too tall. Shorter steps feel better than too tall ones do. We go by 3 and we get 5.58. What is and a third? What is 0.58 in fraction? So that is 0.083. 1 divided by 8. 125. 1 divided by 16.06. So I get 5.5 and a little bit more than a 16th. If I do 5.5 3 times, I get 16.5. So 16.5, that means I have to make up a 1/4 inch over each step. 0.25 divided by 3, that's my 0.083. So 1/4 divided by 3 is a little bit more than a 16th. So we'll go 3/32. 1 divided by 32 times 3, 0.09. That is 0.01 away. So we'll go 5.5 and 3/32. 19 30 seconds. 19 divided by 32, always check your math. 0.59375, and we were looking for 0.5833, so it's 0.01 off. I would be very impressed if anyone could feel a 0.01 difference between the first step and the last step. So we'll go 5 and 19 30 seconds, which is 5 and 1/2 and 3/32s. For the top step, I don't need any of this line, but I do need to know where the run ends. So that's why I marked that one. Then we slide over, get the other step. There. And then we slide over, get this. There. Now we take this 5 and 19 30 seconds and we minus 1 1/16 off the bottom for the height of that tread. And then we try our very best to square this out. Nine 1/4 here. 9 1/4 here. Connect those dots. Square this out. That should about be my stair template. Okay, so the idea is I'm gonna get another 2x6 across the front here, but if I go there and there, are my rises all the same? So that is now 5 and a bit, and that is 5 and a bit, and that is 5 and a bit. So here's an important thing to note. You might think that it would be a great idea to like overlap these a little bit to save some material, but for the ease of being able to actually separate the pieces, you want to not overlap this edge with this edge. Just leave yourself a little bit of space, or at the very least leave yourself space that you can cut it up this way to separate them before cutting out the actual rises and runs. There we go, ready to cut. So here's an easy trick. If you want to be sure that you are through your material, but not hugely through your material, you could set the blade right on top of your support, and that'll get you just barely through the material. But if you come back by about 1 tooth and sit the blade on the support material 1 tooth forward, the most lowest tooth will be a little bit lower than that, and you can set your depth there. Now you can see I'm gonna be just a little bit extra through. I don't want to be through by a lot, but I do want to be through by a bit. If you're through by a lot, you run the risk of cutting into something further down. And this was something I actually did. You can see it a little bit here. I actually accidentally cut my brand new concrete pad because my blade depth was too deep when I was cutting some other piece of lumber. 3 stringers done. Where we're having this height is where we need to have this height and this height. And you can see here, this is just about in line with this groove here. This is above it, and this is way above it. So I have to figure out how much higher this is and cut that difference off of this bottom here. One of these days I'll make a zero clearance fence in combination of using the laser level and then just coming back and doing a couple of extra passes on the bottom of these two. I've gotten it to the point where if I just put a little pressure there, and depending on how far up along these I put it, it's pretty darn level. You gotta remember, this is framing and this is outdoors. If it's, you know, there instead of absolutely dead perfect center, maybe just like a ½ millimeter up on this end, right? Tolerances, you gotta keep that into account, but it was definitely worth fussing to get it to this point. Now I get to screw these in and start putting my deck boards on. Turns out I forgot a step, if you'll pardon the pun. To keep these more supported, more stable, and keep the downward pressure from scooting these out like this, you want to put a piece of anchored material into the concrete that goes across kind of like that. So I don't have any pressure treated 2x4s, which means I'm using an old pressure treated 2x6 that I found. I'm going to notch out the bottom of this one, and then these ones, this one and this one, will get screwed into the side once the piece is down and in place there. So let's go notch this piece out and get the other new piece here set down into the concrete. It'll be fine. I have all the structure done finally, and there's not a whole lot to be said for point of view taping everything. I have a bumblebee right here. So I'm just going to tape everything down on the tops of everything, and then we're going to bust out a whole bunch of deck boards, and this should be done in the next hour. and then all the black stuff was done. And I'm kind of liking it. I like that it'll definitely last a lot longer, and all that's left now is just to get the deck boards on. I'm going to go double check that my measurements are 39 across all the way back and on all the steps, and then I can just buzz out, I think it's 18 of these that I need at that width, and then it's just go put them all back in. So we'll get you back on the point of view for the actual cutting of the things and the measuring and the double checking, and then when it comes to just installing everything, we might do another sit you up to the side, maybe in a different spot for the next bit of time lapse. And we'll rip one more. Oh, that doesn't quite work. That works for this side, but it doesn't work for this side. This is why you check things. Up by 1/8, up by 1/8, and we still have a gap at the top. And then for each one of these, I'm checking which way it's naturally cupping and putting the cup down. I don't want it to be cupped up this way and holding water in the cup, so I'm going to put that down. For anyone who didn't know why I'm bothering with stairs over there when I've already got stairs here, it's because once this airlock goes away, and whether I build a mudroom on the back door or not, my back door actually is at the end of the airlock. So if you're taking out the garbage, if you're taking out the recycling, if you're taking out your compost, although no in Calgary compost, you come out the back door, which is there, you come along the sidewalk, which is new, I would say nice and new, but it's not. And then you're coming along, I got my garbage. Easy steps up, turn here, ignore the porta potty because that'll be gone, and garbage goes here. It's actually my slab that I poured here is underneath the porta potty and comes all the way out to here. So if you wanted, you could just be like, okay, toss the garbage over the fence if you wanted to keep your garbage bins open. I don't know if anyone would, but now there is a very easy up and down the stairs, and it meets up perfectly, like in the, let's see, right about here. It's exactly level here, and it's darn close to exactly level there. I wanted to have it so that these stairs were in line with the side of the garage, so that as you're coming either to or from the house, you're coming straight up the stairs, and then you've got a lot of space here to deal with whatever you're carrying out here. Otherwise, if you did stairs down this way, let's say this is the top, and then you go step, step, I made those 20 inches. If we come 20 inches off here, then all you've got left is an extra, like basically this much. 20 inches from the side there gives you that much space at the bottom of your stairs, which is really cramped and uncomfortable to be trying to scoot through past if the stairs come down this way. And what you would end up doing would be instead like step down, and trying to navigate that way coming off the stairs sideways. So I thought this would be a lot more comfortable and make a lot more sense. It ended up costing a lot more, but I think it'll end up being worth it. It says that this is a much more thought through, finished, done section, easy to get out to your garbage, easy to deal with your recycling, just trying to make life easier for everyone, or at least for the people who buy my house.